Good evening, good evening, good evening, my YouTube family. It is, what's today? Tuesday, March 16th. Yeah, it's the 16th, y'all. You know what time it is. It is Keeping Up with Congress, y'all. I'm here. Woo-wee. I'm here. Please hit the like button, y'all. Hit the subscribe button, the notification button, and share this on all your social media platforms. I am Tamara Johnson Shealy, and you know what we're doing. We're holding them accountable. We are looking for opportunities in legislation. Where is the money? Who is it going to? And how do we get some of it, y'all? As usual, you know, this is brought to you by Withhold the Vote. Withhold the Vote. Let me share my whole screen. Withhold the Vote, where we are holding our candidates and our elected officials accountable. No more do we go to the polls and give this vote away for free. It's not free. It's not free no more. There will be a strategy behind us voting. No, we're not going to the polls and voting for D's and voting for R's and voting for black faces to have black faces in high places, or voting for women. We're voting for policy, y'all. All about the policy. So, you know, I always like to bring you, I'm using another screen, y'all. Give me a moment. Let me figure this out. I think I got it. You know, I like to bring you reparations information. Let me make my screen a little larger so you can see it. All right. This is Dr. Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen. We follow their work. Those of us who have been a part of the movement around reparations, we diligently follow the work of Dr. Sandy Darity, who's done this work for 30 plus years as a lead economist over at Duke University. In this article, Monday Numbers, a closer look at the case for reparations for Black Americans, says the wealth gap that we observe today is the cumulative intergenerational effect of racial injustice in the United States. This is Dr. Sandy Darity. Goes on to say, we think that this wealth gap is what should be the primary target of a reparations initiative, that any well-designed reparations plan for Black descendants of U.S. slavery must be designated and designed, to eliminate the racial wealth differential, says Dr. Darity. The starting point is the failure to provide Black Americans who were emerging from slavery with land grants that they were promised, while whites received land grants 4 times as large. The second phase that's pertinent is nearly 100 years of legal separation. This is called Jim Crow, y'all. We also had a series of white massacres that took place from the end of the Civil War to the end of the 1940s. He goes on to say, mass incarceration of Black Americans, police executions of unarmed Blacks, ongoing discrimination in credit opportunities, and discrimination in housing and unemployment. He going in on them, y'all. Then he goes on to throw them numbers at them. 10 to 12 trillion will be necessary in reparations to begin to close the racial wealth gap. With 2.6% of this nation's wealth is possessed by Black Americans, according to the data from the 2016 survey of consumer finances. 13% of the U.S. population is Black, Goes on to say $800,000 is the difference in total net worth between the average Black household in America and the average white household. Goes on to talk about the 4,000 acres, the acreage of former Confederate held land promised to newly freed Black people as a part of William T. Sherman's Special Field Order number 15. He throws some more data at him. 270 million, that's the total acreage given to white farmers as part of the Homestead Act of 1862. 160 acres, the average acreage given to each white family by the federal government, provided they live on and improve it and paid a small registration fee. Goes in a bit further, the $1 billion, the amount paid by the federal government in the form of a grant to Alaskan Natives in 1971, and 32 million, the amount paid by the federal government in 1986 to the Ottawa tribe of Michigan. And then the $20,000, the amount paid by the federal government to each of 60,000 identified victims of the U.S. internment program that targeted Japanese Americans during World War II. You can't they can't ever win when you got your data, y'all. So this is something, if you haven't seen this article, keep it in your arsenal. Keep it in your arsenal, y'all. It is in the ncpolicywatch.com. This is an article by written about Dr. Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen. Definitely keep it in your arsenal. The SBDC launches an exclusivity project for Black business owners. You know, I always like to bring you some business news. Like I tell you, if you don't have a business or a nonprofit, you better get you one. This Biden administration, the money is coming down the pike, and you need to be in position, y'all. Make sure you are a part of a business, start a business, a partner in a business, find one. So this article talks about some help to business owners and entrepreneurs to rebuild. The North California Small Business Development Center, the SBDC, has launched the Exclusivity Project. Just something for you to pay attention to, y'all. You can learn more at SOLANOSBDC.org. So take a look at that. Look it up. The SBDC, Exclusivity Project for Black business owners. All right, well, let's continue to dive into these House bills tonight. We looked at Senate bills last night, everybody. Tonight, we're going to look at these House bills. So let's dive in. HR 726, COVID-19, the Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone, the TRACE Act. Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone, TRACE Act. Representative Bobby Rush, she's a Democrat out of Illinois. Y'all, so this bill has a stigma attached to it. So this is the second time it's been introduced, but when it was introduced in the last Congress, it was bill number 6666. So this bill, I'm gonna tell you the story behind it. So speculation about the proposed measure in House Resolution 6666 made the rounds on social media shortly after it was introduced. The claim that people who have been in contact with a person who tested positive for the coronavirus would be forced to quarantine appeared on Facebook. So it has some stigma. There's no details to what it says this time, but I wanted to tell you what it said the last time. So House Resolution 666, also known as the COVID-19 Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone, the TRACE Act, is a bipartisan bill introduced by Representative Bobby Rush. It features a $100 billion grant for health and medical centers, nonprofit groups, and other healthcare service providers to establish mobilized coronavirus testing units and train staff in contact tracing. Contact tracing is the practice of tracking down and alerting people an infected individual came in contact with. So according to the CDC, and this is what they say contact tracing is. So, but the internet had their own opinion about what this bill meant and this contact tracing. So he has reintroduced it in this Congress, this 117th Congress, which of course goes into this year, 2021, and through 2022. So there's no language for it. There's no It's not there. You see the summaries in progress. So I was just giving you the history on what it said. Let's see what it says when he brings it back. The internet had their own opinions. HR 727 is facilitating virtual visitations for Nursing Home Residents Act of 2021, facilitating virtual visitations for Nursing Home Residents Act of 2021. So, I thought this was interesting. Representative Sanchez, Linda Sanchez, a Democrat out of California. You know, they're administering vaccines, right? Like, people are getting vaccinated, and particularly the older population, a lot of our nursing homes, they're getting these vaccines. So why are we initiating federal legislation around visitation? Let's take a look. So it says this bill would require skilled nursing facilities to provide a means for residents to conduct virtual visits with loved ones during the pandemic. The legislation would require the Secretary of Health and Human Services to issue guidance to nursing homes on how to provide residents timely and equitable access to televisitation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Nursing homes would also be required to tell residents, representatives of the residents, and relatives of residents of the rights of these services. Why do we have to make these federal rights? Like, this is where I know these Republicans cringe, because I'm cringing, and I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent Democrat. They know it. But I cringe when I see some of this. It just seems like overreach. You know, these are a lot of times they're not all. These are private businesses. Some of these nursing homes. So why are we creating this federal legislation? It just seems like a lot of overreach to me. I get it, but it's just, I think our states can handle this for the most part, or private businesses can handle this. Yeah, Sanchez, your heart is in the right place, I guess. HR 727, y'all. Could be a contract for somebody for all we know. Keeping up with Congress. HR 728, Pandemic Emergency Manufacturing Act of 2021, Pandemic Emergency Manufacturing Act. Representative Janet Skowalski, Democrat out of Illinois. So let's see what this says. Is to publicly manufacture personal protective equipment, prescription drugs, and any other medical supplies necessary to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. The legislation authorizes the federal government to manufacture medical products, including by contracting with existing manufacturers to ensure the nation has an adequate supply of critical materials to avoid rationing during this unprecedented crisis. Well, I heard we got a stockpile of. Now, I'm gonna have to go find I know I saw this, that America now has a stockpile of vaccines. Interesting, y'all. Keeping up with Congress. Keeping up with Congress. Pandemic Emergency Manufacturing Act, HR 728. So these Democrats, okay, I get it. Let's make sure we have what we need, but I think that we're looking at it from a place of profit as well. HR 728. I'm sure we are. Keeping up with Congress. Come on, computer. Y'all, it's freezing up on me here. Here we go. HR 729, the Strength and Diversity Act of 2021. Strength and Diversity Act of 2021. Representative Robert Scott, Democrat out of Virginia. Strength and diversity. What is this all about, sir? So he says, a historic proposal to support local communities in their efforts to desegregate public schools. It says more than 66 years later, America's public schools are more segregated today than at any time since the 1960s. The segregation of students by race and income has dramatically increased over the past 2 decades. The share of K-12 public schools that were high poverty and comprised of mostly Black or Latino students nearly doubled from 9% in 2000 to 16% in 2013. So he goes on to say segregated schools promote inequality in education. And in 2016, schools were with predominantly children of color receive 23 billion less than schools with predominantly white students, despite serving the same number of children. Students of color not only attend schools that are under-resourced, they also attend schools that are over-disciplined. In the 2015-2016 school year, Black students accounted for 15% of all students, but 31% of referrals to law enforcement and school-based arrests, y'all. So this Strength and Diversity Act establishes, it helps fulfill the promise of equity in education by offering support to districts that are developing, implementing, or expanding school diversity initiatives. Establishes a grant program that provides federal funding to support voluntary local efforts to increase diversity in schools. All right, who is this again? This is Representative Scott, Robert Scott, Democrat out of Virginia. All right. HR 730, Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act of 2021, Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act of 2021. This is Representative Scott again. Okay, so I looked this one up. Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act. And there was a word here. Here it is. Equity, Inclusion, and Enforcement Act. In this section, it amends the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to restore a private right of action to file disparate impact claims. I didn't know what that was, right? So what is a disparate impact claim? It's a disparate impact lawsuit claims that an employer's facially neutral practice had a discriminatory effect. So it's a way to prove employment discrimination based on the effect of an employment policy or practice rather than the intent behind it. So this is his bill, Representative Robert Scott, Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act of 2021. I would have to learn more about these kind of claims to really have an opinion about it. So this is why we do the work. This is where we are keeping up with Congress, and this is where we do the work. We can't do it. I can't do it all myself. And this is why we get behind the scenes and do it and figure this stuff out. Like I said, we won't be experts in any of this, maybe not, but we're going to know a little bit about it all, right? HR 730 is Equity and Inclusion Enforcement Act. HR 731 is the Pre-Apprentice Wraparound Support Service Fund Act, Pre-Apprenticeship Wraparound Support Services Fund Act of 2021. Representative Adam Smith is a Democrat out of Washington. So this would allow pre-apprenticeship programs to use grant funds under the legislation to provide stipends for participants to cover certain out-of-pocket costs such as housing, transportation, and childcare. So this is giving them stipends, these apprentices giving them stipends. I ain't mad at him. HR 731. I told you I do believe in the apprenticeship programs in this country. HR 731. HR 732. HR 732 is the Unconscionable Pricing Act. This bill makes it unlawful for any person to sell, rent, or lease an emergency supply of an unconscionable price at an unconscionable price during a federally declared emergency. Sounds like somebody's been gouging. Some folks getting rich and getting paid, y'all. Jackie Spire, Democrat out of California. She wants to cut that out. HR 732. HR 733, Stop the Evasion of Iran Sanctions Act of 2021. Stop Evasion of Iran Sanctions Act of 2021. Representative Stile, Brian Stile. What is this all about, Representative Stile? Okay, he goes on to say this Stiles bill prevents those trying to avoid U.S. sanctions against the Iranian regime by using a loophole known as INSTEX, INSTEX. Goes on to say, here's a quote, financial sanctions are an effective tool to prevent Iran's nuclear buildup and cut off financial resources for the regime's leaders. Sanctions enforcement is critical to preventing the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Some want to trade with Iran using a loophole. My bill stops that. The Stop Evasion of Iran Sanction Act sends a clear message to the world that we are serious about sanctions enforcement. Oh, he is a tough one, right? Helping the Iranian mullahs sidestep U.S. sanctions for their state sponsorship of terrorism and clandestine nuclear activity will not be tolerated by the U.S. Treasury. There's another tough one. This is Representative French Hill. Financial institutions around the world have a simple choice: choose to do business with the United States or with the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism. As the ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security, I support Congressman Stiles' important legislation to demand from our allies a unified response to Iran's continued threat to global peace and stability. Yeah, they're tough. Those are tough ones, y'all. HR 733, Stop Evasion of Iran Sanctions Act, Republican out of Wisconsin, he and his colleagues. HR 734, the Fred Korematsu Congressional Gold Medal Act of 2021. We actually learned, we heard about him, y'all, in a Senate bill, Fred Korematsu, but just as a refresher, Fred Korematsu was a national civil rights hero. In 1942, at the age of 23, he refused to go to the government incarceration camps for Japanese Americans. After he was arrested and convicted of defying the government's order, he appealed his case all the way to the Supreme Court. With new evidence, a pro bono legal team that included the Asian Law Caucus reopened Korematsu's 40-year-old case on the basis of government misconduct. And on November 10th, 1983, Korematsu's conviction was overturned in a federal court in San Francisco. It was a pivotal moment in civil rights history. So we actually heard about him in the Senate bill. So this is HR 734. HR 735 is to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 502 East Cotati Avenue in Cotati, California, as the Arthur Lewis Ebleto Post Office Building. We see these a lot, these renaming of post offices, y'all. HR 735. HR 736 is the Community Immunity during COVID-19 Act of 2021. Community immunity. Representative Underwood, Lauren Underwood, Democrat out of Illinois. This community immunity during COVID-19 would help communities bolster COVID-19 vaccination efforts and increase immunization rates for life-saving vaccines. The community immunity during COVID-19 would provide robust funding to support local initiatives to boost vaccination rates during the COVID-19 pandemic, including efforts to build vaccine confidence. Y'all hear that? Vaccine confidence in the COVID-19 vaccine, increase immunization rates and other recommended vaccines, and ensure that people continue to access primary care services. The legislation also ensures that immunization providers and local organizations can lead community-specific initiatives that will reach all community members, particularly underserved populations. Community immunity. They coming in, y'all. HR 736, Representative Underwood, Democrat out of Illinois. Pay attention, keeping up with Congress. HR 737 is the Renew Win Act, and Win is spelled with two I's. Renew Win Act. This is Representative Bellato, Republican out of California. Renew Win Act, Win with two I's. Let's see what this is all about. It's the responsible, no-cost extension of Western water infrastructure improvements, or Renew Win Act. It's a no-cost, clean extension of operation and storage provisions for the WIN Act. So it goes in, we still don't know what it is. Let's see. Having dealt with this is a quote, having dealt with water issues firsthand, both as a member of Congress and as a farmer, he knows how critical this this resource is to our families and communities. So it's dealing with water and having water in that area. This is California, y'all. Representative Valadio. I'm probably butchering his name. HR 737. We see you, Rep. HR 738, Essential Pay for Essential Workers Act. Essential Pay for Essential Workers Act. This is Representative Watson Coleman, Bonnie Watson Coleman, Democrat out of New Jersey. This was actually a bill that was introduced in last Congress. Didn't have a lot of these bills, the summary is still in progress. So there's still no language for these bills, but we're going to keep paying attention. We're looking for whatever information we can to require employers to pay essential pay to healthcare employees during public health emergencies and to provide a tax credit for the cost of such pay. So this was what it was said last Congress. We're keeping our eyes on what it's going to say this Congress. Representative Watson Coleman, Bonnie Watson Coleman, Democrat out of New Jersey. HR 739 for the relief of Median El Mustra. Yeah, I tell you, I do butcher folks' names now. Median El Mustra. Who is he? Let's see. Here's a story. Seriously ill Dearborn Heights father in danger of deportation by ICE to Lebanon after living in the U.S. for 30 years. Median El Mustra has been locked up in an immigration and custom enforcement detention center in Battle Creek since November 12th. This was actually an article from 2019. It says the Dearborn Heights man is very ill. He has diabetes, liver damage, hepatitis B, and hearing loss. His family fears that if El Mustra is deported to Lebanon, he won't get the medical care he needs to survive. The 49-year-old business owner has been living in the U.S. for about 30 years. He obtained a green card when he was briefly married to an American citizen in the early 90s. The marriage only lasted a year. Fast forward to 2007 when he tried to get his green card renewed and couldn't remember his wedding anniversary to his first wife. Immigration officials accused El Mustra of marriage fraud, despite a sworn affidavit from his first wife stating the marriage was valid. El Mustra has been fighting deportation ever since. So this is HR 739, Rashida Tlaib, Democrat out of Michigan. HR 739. HR 740 is Climate Resilient Transportation Infrastructure Study Act. Climate Resilient Transportation Infrastructure Study Act. Now that's a long one. Representative Julia Brownlee, Democrat out of California. This bill will require the U.S. Department of Transportation to conduct a comprehensive assessment of the climate resiliency of federally funded transportation infrastructure. This is a quote, goes on to say, we must ensure that all public infrastructure projects funded by taxpayer dollars are built to withstand the impacts of climate change, including wildfires, landslides, and floods. These actions will not only strengthen our nation's transportation infrastructure, but will also save taxpayers money in the long term. The Climate Resilient Transportation Infrastructure Act would require the Secretary of Transportation to enter into an agreement with the Transportation Research Board of the National Academies to conduct a study on the actions needed to ensure that federal agencies are taking into account current and future climate conditions in planning, designing, building, operating, maintaining, investing in, and upgrading any federally funded transportation infrastructure investment. So this is Representative Julia Brownlee, Democrat out of California. Whew, y'all, we've been doing really, really good. We are at the half hour. I am so proud of us, y'all. Keeping up with Congress, staying in the fight. You know, I know a lot of this stuff it's not boring to me because I'm into politics and I'm really into policy, but I know a lot of it can be a bit overwhelming. I don't know. That's why I come to you daily, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm coming to you 4 times a week to bring you this information, talk us through it, so that we can kind of get used to seeing politics more holistically. You know, we see it through our lens. You know, a lot of my followers and a lot of us, we're true to reparations. We're true to it, but we're gonna have to negotiate with some of these people. We're gonna have to go to Congress and we're gonna have to cut some deals, y'all. So when we go to Congress and we trying to get something passed, we're gonna have to give a little bit. So we need to understand all of this right here, right now, because you know, we some of these people we're gonna have to play politics with them. Let's just be real. We're gonna have to play politics. And you know, whatever it takes, we're gonna have to kind of figure it out. So I don't want us to be behind the 8 ball and you know, go into this, because some of y'all are gonna run. We're gonna have more people other than me that, you know, may or may not put themselves back in these races. So if, you know, we got to be prepared. So I just want to say thank you for sticking and staying. Thank you for, you know, listening to this and following this. Because like I said, this ain't the easiest. It ain't like entertaining. I try to be as entertaining as I can be, but I don't think I'm all that funny. But nevertheless, I'm bringing it to you in a way that we can digest it, because we can no longer go to the polls and just keep voting for people just because they look like us, just because they can sing. Barack get in the pulpit and sing, and we all or we see a brown face. Oh, there's somebody black. We're gonna vote. No, those days that's over. That's over. We need to be more politically mature, and we got to have receipts in these political streets. We got to be more politically mature than that. We're done, because by 2053, the data says Black America will have zero net wealth. We're on a race to the bottom. So I thank you. You know, I'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. to 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube. It's raining here in Georgia. It's a rainy day in Georgia. So I'm done for the day. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. And you know, of course, I will put your comments on the screen. See you tomorrow night.